I was sailing a small sunfish around an island near Florida in shallow water. As I cruised along, suddenly, a large section of water directly in front of my bow exploded with a large splash. Immediately afterward, my boat rammed into something under the surface and came to a complete stop. My first thought was, I've hit a reef. But suddenly, the entire boat was lifted up and spun around 90 degrees, almost dumping me into the water. There was another big splash, and I saw something zoom away, leaving a wake behind it. I was left freaked out and shaking. Then I thought to myself, I must have hit a big dolphin. Maybe it was a manatee. Lots of dolphin around here, so I finished up my sail and went home. When I got to the beach, I pulled up the centerboard and found a real surprise. A 2-inch chunk had been bitten out of the wood. You could clearly see the marks of 3 large teeth. I'm very happy that I didn't fall out of the boat that day. Not a sea monster, but definitely one of the strangest things I've ever seen in my life. It was about 2 a.m. in the middle of the Atlantic and very dark with no moon. As I was walking up to the bow of our sailboat to inspect the sails, I saw a faint glow in the water a long way off. I stared at the glow for a long time before I realized there were actually 2 glowing objects moving quickly underwater on a collision course with our boat. Immediately, I thought it was some submarine or torpedo about to ram our boat. But then the glowing shapes came right alongside the boat, perhaps a foot underwater. They were 2 ghastly blue dolphins, glowing brightly and so vivid and close in the clear water. I immediately realized the dolphins were being illuminated by the bioluminescent plankton. But the sight was surreal. I watched them play in our bow for a while, imagining sailors of the past witnessing these eerie dolphin spirits and how mind-blowing that must have been. Not me, but my father, back in his commercial fishing days, noticed that there was a t-shirt in the middle of his net after one tow. After a little investigation, he found out that it was not a shirt, but a human torso wearing a shirt. He said he was terrified that he would open the net and a head would roll out onto his feet. But it didn't happen. His captain radioed ahead, and they brought the torso back to the docks, where they met the police and a coroner. They were eventually able to identify the body, based on the clothing, as a victim of a plane crash that had occurred fairly recently. My dad said he offered a free lobster to the coroner, who graciously accepted it until he found out that it had been found in the net with the body. After that, he got angry and told him to throw it back. I've been in the U.S. Navy for almost a decade now, and I am currently on my 3rd deployment to the Western Pacific. I work on communications equipment and spend a fair amount of time just scanning different frequencies to see what I come across. A couple years back, we were 30 to 40 nm off the coast of the Philippines. It was just over the horizon, and the ship had lost power. Lights, engines, everything just went silent. I don't want to say this is regular, but it's happened enough throughout my career that it doesn't bother me half as much as it should. So, power is out, emergency lights are on, and the UPS are keeping comms up until the engineers can get the power back up. I am doing my usual, scanning high frequencies for anything coming out of the PI, when my receiver starts picking up the most awful, interesting, horrific sounds I've ever heard in my life. I've heard all types of interference. It wasn't that. I've heard people trying to go over encrypted circuit without crypto. And it wasn't that. It raised the hair on my neck and arms and made me feel very, very small. It felt like I was sitting there for hours while these sounds crawled under my skin, like I was traveling through the warp without a proper equipment. After about 5 minutes, it suddenly stopped and the power came back on. I will never forget the sounds I heard. The sounds were primal, not human, like something very large was expressing itself, but I couldn't comprehend it. It wasn't really afraid of it. I suppose in the same way a single-celled organism wouldn't really be afraid of a human. I can't really explain it, because I've never heard of anything that came close to sounding like it. Maybe somebody was transmitting weird sounds that might screw with anybody who might been listening. And maybe it was made by a much creepier timing of losing and gaining power. I'm not so sure. Maybe it was something deep, far off in the ocean, that we have no idea exists. The possibilities are endless when you think about it. Not necessarily deep sea, but still the ocean, night, and creatures. 1985. Nighttime, full moon, off a popular fishing spot called East Point in Darwin. My sister and I are in a decent-sized canoe and have paddled out about 2 kilometers or so. I'm an idiot, trying to half scare her and be brave at the same time. Something big bumps the bottom of the boat, a gradual, slow rasp. Hair's all up, crapping bricks. Over the side, we all can see this massive shadow, like one side to the other of the canoe. Fins come out of the water, either side of the canoe. Panic and paddling ensues. My sister is screaming. I can't. I'm the big bro, but my butt was tightly clenched, and I was white with fear. We made it back to the shore unscathed, and found out that it was actually a manta ray. Another time, a mate and I swam to a sandbar, which took us a good 10 minutes to swim to directly out from the beach. We stayed there until the water began coming over our thighs, and then bailed back towards land. A minute into the swim back, and we spotted a decent-sized fish swimming near us. All I can think of was how flipping big the shark crocodile Godzilla it had detached from. The rest of us swam in total fear on my behalf. I went deep-sea fishing last summer. I don't have an insanely terrifying story, but I have a couple that may entertain. Both happened on the same trip. The first story is that at one, a teaser line got caught up in the prop shaft. No big deal. The captain, my friend's dad, turns off the motors, and then a couple of us dive in with goggles. At this point, we were 40 to 50 miles offshore in the Gulf of Mexico. Water depth, 150 to 200 feet. We have a kitchen knife and are trying to cut this thing, insanely tough fishing line, off a circular metal shaft. Being in the water, noticing how clear and blue it was, gave me a sense of awe, but at the same time, a total sense of fear. I knew that the water was as clear as a swimming pool, yet I still couldn't see the bottom. I couldn't see anything, really, except a gorgeous shade of blue. After a bit, my other buddy wanted to help out with the tangled mess, so I got out, gave him my goggles. While down there, the 2 guys noticed that one of these guys was swimming beneath. For y'all who don't know, these remoras look like this on the other side, so getting sucked into one is inadvisable. Basically, the remora began to swim at my friends, so they all just got out of there, and the line was already well enough taken care of anyway. The second story is less intimidating. We had 4 lines out, and one in the middle popped out of the outrigger. The line started flying, and I mean flying out of the wheel. My friends and I rushed to pick up the rod so we can land this apparently massive hunk of sea meat. But the line snapped before we even got to the rod. To this day, I'm not 100% sure what sort of fish that was, although my suspicions was that it could have been a gargantuan kingfish.